Hey, what's up, everybody?
Yo, good morning, good
Podcast
morning, good morning,
time!
or whatever time you were watching this.
Good morning, good afternoon,
Good
good evening, and good night.
Is that the Truman Show? I've never seen it, but I
Think
think
so.
I've seen that clip before.
I think so. I think that's his good morning. Oh, and in case I don't see you, good evening, good afternoon, good evening,
and
good night. Something like that. Something like that.
Okay,
Got an Apple Barn hat on.
it's nice.
First off, tell the people what Apple Barn is, because this is your thing kind of now.
Hats?
Like your hat is like becoming an obsession like shoes are to me. So last time we had minor league baseball, the cheesecakes or something like that.
Strawberry shortcake hat.
Strawberry shortcake. Today we're Apple Barn.
It's a restaurant in Pigeon Forge.
Restaurant in Pigeon Forge. And it literally has the little string rope piece at the front. Like
cord.
old school.
Yeah. It's a nice hat.
That hat probably been in that store trying to sell it for
7 years.
I was gonna say 30, but okay, 7.
I don't think 30.
Not quite 30.
There's only 4 on the shelf. It would have been 30. They just order 5 at a time.
Apple Barn. Who's on your shirt?
Preseason All-American.
Is he preseason All-American?
He got rated the #1 punter in the country.
Nice.
The human highlight reel. Kai Kroger, South Carolina Gamecock
The
punter.
human highlight reel.
Mm-hmm. We have the best
In
the nation.
so Caleb and I are Gamecock fans. I'll tell you my Gamecock story, how I became a Gamecock fan. Not really how I became one, but when it became a team that I was passionate about. But we are Gamecock fans, and we have Shane Beamer as our coach right now and love some Beamer ball. Beamer ball is awesome. He is known for special teams. And so this cat here, this punter, like last year, I'm just making this up. Caleb will know exactly. I feel like he threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown.
In the Clemson game, we pulled off that fake punt on like our second drive.
Yeah. And he threw for a touchdown. He ran for a touchdown. And
I want to say he threw for more than one touchdown.
At least one. Anyways, and then he was a beast of a punter, just dropping balls inside of the 20.
He kicked dimes.
Yeah, he kicked dimes.
He kicked dimes.
So Kai's the man.
They're talking about him being the only punter probably taken in next year's draft.
So let me tell you how I truly started like being a passionate Gamecock fan. Okay. I was at Lee, and my whole life I was a Broncos fan. That was my top team. That was the team for me. And so I went to Lee, and when I got to Lee, found out that everybody had come from different parts of the world. So around here, it was always Clemson, Carolina. Clemson dominated, so it was no fun being a Gamecocks fan. But when you got to Lee, everybody came from different parts of the world. So there were these Ohio State fans and Michigan fans and, Penn State and Florida and Georgia, all these different Tennessee and all these different teams. And so the rivalries of inside of all these teams were so great, and everybody's just talking junk to each other with all the rivalries that they had. So it just kind of made me amp up my passion for Gamecock football. And so I started more eagerly following them. I'd always been a fan and always had, different, when people say, oh, what's your favorite college team? It really didn't follow college until I was in college. So
I'd rather watch Gamecock football than
right. And then now you're at a place to where Gamecocks are, your top team probably, right?
100%.
For me, it's still Broncos. Still got something inside of me, man. I just love those people.
They disappoint me.
They disappoint me every year too, but they have brought some great joy to my life through the years.
For sure. I cried in a Broncos game.
Like you did. So have I.
Punched a pillow and
it was
bad.
It was rough. It was a rough night.
Terrible night.
Baltimore Ravens.
2012-2013 divisional round.
Raheem Moore.
We
don't want to talk about it.
If you're watching this, we love you. You were good.
Raheem Moore, if you're watching this.
But you disappointed.
Why would... You can't get burned on that play, Raheem. So we've said nothing. We've been on here for 5 minutes, and we've said nothing so far.
Probably. So let's get this
actual started.
We just came back.
From the Ark.
And
Creation Museum.
We told you all about this. This is either be next week's podcast or the next one.
Yeah, we took the whole staff. So one of the things that a mentor, I don't even call him a mentor, but a friend of mine who's in ministry told me, he said, you got to pastor your staff and care for them. And so one of the things that I have put inside of our budget yearly is to take our staff somewhere and together, all their families, just to build that camaraderie, that family cohesiveness. And so this year we rented a big bus and we went to Kentucky, and we went to see the Ark, and then we went the next day to the Creation Museum, and then turned around and came back for church on Sunday.
True.
When you pull up to the Ark,
it is
massive.
It's to scale.
It's just right. The Ark is to scale,
but it's built so you could. It talks about the Ark being cubits. The biblical cubit and the royal cubit could be two different measurements. So it's built to the smaller understood scale,
right,
not the bigger one.
Right.
But it is to scale to what the Bible calls it.
Yeah. And it is massive.
Huge. Like you see
cruise ship huge.
You see it in the distance and you're like, wow,
that's a cool boat.
It's a pretty decent boat. It's 2 miles away. Then you just keep consistently walking towards it and
it is massive.
It's huge.
It is like cruise ship massive.
Yeah. It was awesome.
Super cool. Learned some neat things while inside of the boat. One of the things that I learned was I've heard the joke said in the years, things like, oh, why didn't Noah just stomp on the cockroach? So, why would he even bring them on the boat? Why wouldn't he just stomp on the cockroach?
Should have left the mosquitoes.
Right, should have left the mosquitoes, things of that nature. But then we got on the boat, and one of the things that because it's trying to explain to you how all of those animals got on the boat, or how Noah was able to bring them all. And what it talks about is like the spiders and the insects, certain insects that they weren't even on the boat,
right?
Because God didn't tell them to bring them on the boat, because they could have survived by floating on debris. I forgot the exact scripture they used, but where God's telling him to bring them, and he talks about those who breathe through their nostrils or something of that nature. So that was super cool. So Noah didn't make a bad decision by not stomping out the cockroaches. The cockroaches were just here and survived the flood.
Totally.
Super interesting.
Yeah.
What about you? Something like that stood out to you?
So the boat's awesome. I'm very much a reader when it comes to that kind of stuff. And when it talks about, there's portions that where the Grand Canyon, and you're understanding that in a secular view, the Grand Canyon's built through millions of years of the Colorado River running. And then you see a biblical precedent, which calls it when God releases the living waters from under the earth and over the earth. It's very realistic that the Grand Canyon is a split from where water poured out of during
and even how the different layers are done. It's happened quickly, not something where the world teaches us. It's over time. I love how it talks about the dating of certain things and carbon dating, and how warped that is in our culture. Man, it's so warped, thinking things are 7 million years old, and there's no possible way for us to date things back that far.
Right.
And so I love all of those sorts of things. I just love the apologetic aspect of what you see there, and just
totally
truth over scientific data, rather than just what people have been taught through the years, and this is what it has to be. Well, here goes the truth behind certain things.
Yeah, totally. I love Ken Ham is the guy over all this, and the way he designed it, I'm assuming he's the one that kind of had the oversight and the design and most of the process. But you bring juvenile animals, stuff like that. It does. The Bible doesn't say, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah, God sent the animals. One of the things it said is God sent the animals, so why wouldn't He send juveniles? Why? Because they eat less,
they sleep more,
and they have a longer reproductive cycle ahead of them, rather than a fully grown giraffe. Let's bring a juvenile giraffe.
Totally.
And so makes total sense.
Absolutely.
Why wouldn't God do that?
And then when you see the size of the boat, and you're like, can every animal in the world fit on that? Well, it tells you to bring 2 of every kind of animal.
Right.
So you're not bringing grizzly bear, black bear, brown bear, polar bear. you're bringing Ursidae. You're bringing one family of bears that through microevolutions, adaptations, are becoming brown bears.
Right.
What are when they're getting more food and they're growing bigger and they need to be the ones with lighter coloring are existing and not being sought out, not being hunted because or getting more food because they're blending in better.
Yep.
And microevolutions are just another way of saying small adaptations, survival of the fittest. Not
evolution shouldn't be a bad word because evolution happens in every single one of our lives.
We've built this culture around.
But we're afraid to say evolution because we think that means we think that means that we were once apes. That's not what evolution is. That's not what all evolution is. That is what has been portrayed, but that's not what the concept of evolution is. We all evolve to a certain degree. You know, totally. We all came from one human. So we have all evolved even in the pigmentation of our skin. Right? You know, there's a reason why people who are on the equator or there's a reason why Africa is mostly darker skinned people, and people who are on the equator are darker skinned people, and people who are further away are lighter skinned people. It's because of evolution, and again, that's not a bad word. It's because they're living in this year after year after year after year, and their skin is adapting to that and evolving to a place to where they can actually handle these certain conditions rather than it being these are two completely different groups of people.
My favorite way of describing it is survival of the fittest. It's the most common word to describe the situation. Things do better in environments that they were built to do better in.
Yep.
Like the reason that I love bears because everyone kind of knows what kinds of bears there are. Smaller black bears survive better in specific regions is because bunch of trees, bunch of staying dark, staying low, and there's not you think black bear, Tennessee, Pigeon Forge area, those sort of the Appalachian Mountains, the Smokies. There's not massive moose to hunt, but a grizzly bear or big old brown bear or a polar bear.
Grizzly bears hunt meese.
Moose.
Moose eyes.
Just moose.
Well, one moose is a moose, but how many is multiple mooses?
Just moose.
It's not mooses. Mises?
It's like trout.
Mices? No, not mices. Mises. No?
It's like trout.
Just moose.
It's just trout is a...
Trouts.
No, it's not trout.
Multiple trouts is a trouts.
No.
Okay, so grizzlies hunt meese.
Probably.
Wow. Last week we talked about making up words.
All you do is make up words.
So here we go. Meese. So grizzlies hunt meese.
No.
Black bears hunt trouts. You like how I added S in there?
There's no...
What do polar bears hunt?
Caribou.
Stop it right now. How are they chasing them suckers down?
Seals. You choose a juvenile or a weak one. Wow. Survival of the fittest. Everything that is built to be better than their predecessors survives longer than
That's why John Elway played so long.
Because his arm was built for the modern game.
Boom. Wow, that's impressive. So, there's a lot of things I have questions about.
There's a lot of things that I have questions about that I probably have answers to your questions and you have answers to mine.
One of the things is, I got asked a lot while we were on the trip. Was Bigfoot on the ark?
Bigfoot doesn't exist.
My answer is yes, of course. He's an animal. He was on the ark. What's the giant ape that they had in that picture?
You have the photo.
What was it called? Giganticus or something like that?
Probably.
I can't remember. Anyways, there's a giant ape on the ark.
Yeah.
Why cannot through adaptation and evolution that turn into Bigfoot? And again, I'm not talking about he has a human soul. I don't believe that at all. I believe he's an animal. I don't know that I believe in Bigfoot.
He walks on 2 feet.
Right. I don't know that I believe.
He's not hunched over like a gorilla.
Listen, I don't know that I believe in Bigfoot, but I do.
You've convinced yourself.
I do like the conversation.
You've convinced yourself.
I do believe he's an animal, but I do like the conversation.
You and Ryan Dean and Pastor Brad.
Is Bigfoot real? Anyway, so I'm intrigued by that. Number 2 is I got off the boat. friend of mine, pastor friend of mine, texted me and said, "Hey, saw you at the Ark. Hope you had a great time. We went last year; it was awesome. But can you believe that he put dinosaurs on the Ark? How crazy!" And I thought to myself, "That's strange. That's strange text. I didn't even know how to respond."
There's no biblical precedence that dinosaurs weren't on the ark.
And I love so for years, like again, these aren't heaven or hell issues for me. These are just intriguing conversational issues. But one of the things that it talked about was how in an actual and I believe in an actual 6 day of creation. Like I believe in 6 actual days of creation.
Right.
I don't believe that they were, thousands of years over, or even millions of years. I believe in 6 actual days of creation. And so but it talked about how you can't have a garden of perfection and death happening outside of that garden for thousands of years when that wasn't a thing until the fall of man.
Right.
So the curse that sin ultimately then put into the earth happened at the fall of man, which then created death
And
as we know it.
the best part of that subject, we got that a lot at the Creation Museum, a lot less than the Ark, but carnivorous things didn't exist.
Yeah, they all ate plants.
Right. As far as we understand from what Scripture presents, that carnivorous things didn't exist. Not that they weren't animals that eat meat, lions existed. But the understanding from that is the lion ate something completely different.
Which I wish I had that scripture reference that they used. Because that would be really cool to have right now, to be able to say, in Genesis, this and this.
I didn't know this conversation.
I didn't know this conversation was coming up either. And we should have brought a laptop here.
My Bible's right there.
It's all right. Y'all should look it up. Look that up. It's very intriguing.
I'll put it in the...
Put it right here. Put it right over us right here. Go check out the scripture right here. Here it is. So anyways, that was super cool. So I'm a big, even more so after leaving this, I am very pro 6 actual days of creation.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no argument against it because, I mean, me and you had this conversation of in the beginning, God spoke and everything happened. There's no...
Yeah, this is one of the conversations we had there.
God isn't a man that he should have to wait on the subject of time and space to work correctly.
Right. So one of the things that people say is, well, it's at least this many years because it would take this long for light to get from this star to us.
Right.
So Earth has to be at least this many years old. And it's like, no. God spoke and there was light.
Right.
It's not a process that God had to work out or figure out or say, okay, I'm gonna birth light, and then when light gets here, that's whenever this is gonna happen.
The craziest thing is 1 through 6. It's in the beginning, he let there be light, and then day 3 or 4 is the stars and the moon and the sun. So what is light from 1, 2, and
bro? He is like, come on, he's the light of the world.
About to have to change your sermon.
Preach it
this week.
Preach it.
I mean, it's a great question as well.
Yeah, so it was super cool. It was definitely thought provoking.
Totally.
And then you go from, and honestly, even how they figured out what it said whenever you first walked in is, this is what the Bible says. This part is us trying to figure out, basically, to color inside of the lines that the Bible has given us. We're trying to color in this picture.
Right.
And so for me, that was very cool watching the feeding system, how they figured out the feeding system with all of the stuff that Noah would have had, how he figured out feeding system and how he figured out, to getting rid of the waste from the animals and their number 1s and number 2s that they did.
The way that 8 people could realistically tackle.
How 8 people could handle and how many animals they had to care for each day.
And there's no biblical precedence that Noah couldn't have hired labor to help him build the ark. It's just saying, like, there was that conversation that got brought up in there as well. Like, could he hire a metal worker to build hinges for him or whatever? Totally. There's no biblical precedence against it.
Yep.
Noah didn't have to. Maybe Noah
They
did.
didn't get on the ark with him,
Right.
but they could have helped him. He could have hired them. Hey, I'll give you some trees for some metalworking or whatever. Bartered his way into making all of those things.
Right, totally. And I mean, there was like spoof videos there where they're joking about stuff, but a lot of that makes total sense. I mean, there's no reason that you can't use an outside source to help him build it.
Yep. And then the years that it took Noah to build this,
Between 75 and
right, somewhere around 75, 80, 100 years, somewhere in that process.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I mean, woodwork, bending the wood, making the wood fit that shape, plugging the wood,
Crazy.
the wood. And that boat was big.
And I think to some of you out there, rather than it being about the ark as much as it is about, sometimes, we're reading the book All In as well. And in the book All In, it talks about how faithful Noah was to the call. And it took him 100 years basically to receive the promise of the Lord in his life.
Right.
Tired?
No, I yawned. I don't mean I'm tired. I'm ready to go.
Lack of oxygen to your brain?
I think that's the...
Is that why you yawn?
Maybe.
Look that up. Post it right here. Why do people yawn? But anyways, 100 years Noah spent for that one moment. And Noah is remembered in today because of that one moment. And everything else that Noah did in his life, I'm sure is great and wonderful and awesome, and I'm sure he was a great man. But he spent 100 years waiting for that one moment. And sometimes you're waiting for God's promises in your life, and sometimes you may get frustrated with what's happening or what's not happening. And I just encourage you, man, God is on time. You may not be, you may not like the time that he is on, but God is on time.
Totally.
And he is doing what he needs to do, working things out. And so just be patient, continue to do what you're supposed to do, and let him do what he's going to do.
Agree completely.
Yeah. Then we went to the Creation Museum. It was awesome.
Creation Museum was
me,
it was the better one of the two.
Yeah, I was about to say,
a person like me who reads everything.
Same. A lot of things that were awesome there. But one of the things it talks about the story of David and Goliath.
I was about to say that was the first one that came.
Yeah, it was super cool, right? How culture has almost created Goliath as a myth, as a mythical figure.
Oh, I was going somewhere completely different. You tell this part.
Okay.
I've got another thing about that. You go.
Okay, I'm gonna go. They've created Goliath of Gath as this almost mythical figure, and say things like, well, they didn't even know if there was actually a David.
That's where I was going with that.
There's conversation that there wasn't even a real David, and let alone a Goliath that he fought. And then, in the I don't even know where. I was gonna try to act like I knew where the piece of history was found, but there's
Middle East.
Yeah, of course, in the Middle East. But there's a piece of pottery that refers to Goliath of Gath, and it's like, wow. Now, and that was some like 30 years ago we found it, 20 years ago we found it, and it's like everybody that tries to make the Bible as something that it's not, make it this fairy tale book. One of the things that Michael Knight, whenever he preached those morning sessions, that
right.
he kept saying, the rocks will cry out. And he said, now we have all of these rocks and all of these
That's good.
All of these things that are still crying out from the grave that God is still alive, he's still doing, he's still working. And he used all of these archaeological type concepts for rocks, what the rocks are saying today. And so that was one of them, where Goliath of Gath was an actual person, and we have a
I hate that. I love the argument that David wasn't a real person, because I love the resolution that David was a real person. Mm-hmm. But there's this idea that to build up this line of Jesus, you needed something, almost a person beyond recognition, a person that was just mighty perfect and had their downspouts to kind of tie everything in together. And that's kind of why the Bible sets it up like that, is the concept where they're great and they're bad, and everyone kind of is thinking that they're seeing themselves in David.
Right.
And it's not bad to see yourself in David. Every person has their highs and their lows. But the argument is, did David even exist? Or is he a mythological person from the Bible, like a Hercules or like Odysseus, like one of those Greek myths who are just built up to be on this platform? But instead, I don't know if you read the other one, but the piece of pottery they found reads from the line of David.
From the line of David, yeah.
And that's awesome.
Yep.
Because there's no piece of pottery that we found so far that has, as far as I know from that excursion, the trip we went on, that reads David, son of Jesse or whatever. But there is stuff that always refers back to from the line of David.
Yep.
And it gets rid of the argument completely that did David even exist?
Yeah, and then there's this again. There was a video. The guy had like 4 coffee mugs.
Right.
And he took beans of how many sources we have from the Odyssey.
And it was like 9.
Yeah, and there were just like a few beans here. And all of these books that we consider to be absolutely truth accurate. And
accurate to what Homer wrote.
Right. The Iliad.
The Iliad.
Yeah. So there's, 9 sources here and 4 here and 12 here. And then
they do the New Testament.
And then they do the New Testament. And it's like a bag of coffee beans inside of the cup, and then another bag of coffee beans. Right. And it's some ridiculous amount.
I don't want to get the stat wrong.
Yeah, don't get it wrong.
But it was
Post it here.
Don't say that, because if I can't find it, you just have me in this weird spot.
It's really cool how things that were contemporaries to the New Testament being written, and they have 4 and 5 and 9 and 12 sources.
And they're all being written at the same time.
They're all being written at the same time, all contemporaries, and they have 9 and 12 and 5 sources, and everybody, just absolutely stamp a validation on them, and then somehow we devalue the New Testament as if it doesn't have the same credibility to that. All those.
I want to say like the Iliad was the second highest, and it had like 119 versions of the Iliad that all were some way,
crazy.
Shape,
you
or
should
form.
Find that and post it right here.
Don't, you're gonna make me search for this, and if I can't find it, it just looks bad.
I love it. So go to the art, go to the Creation Museum. It was super cheap to get in. It was like, I don't know, I say super cheap. It was like $29 a person. And then
it's completely worth it if you.
It's a long drive. It's a 10-hour drive, and so it's a little bit of investment. But tired?
No.
What's yawning? Lack of oxygen to your brain?
We just went over.
Post that right here.
Yawning is.
Boom. Perfect. Definitely worth it. Definitely a trip that you could make with your family, low cost, and walk away going, "Wow, that was awesome. That was super cool."
Yeah, I agree completely.
And then finally, summer is winding down, and you're going on a mission trip. Have we talked to you since you're going on a mission trip?
I've been behind the chair, but we haven't discussed
this.
Shout out Jonathan Zeman.
Thank you, Zeman, and everyone else who jumped in to help. Zeman said he was going to make it his mission to send Caleb on a mission trip, and he did, and it worked. We got 100 likes, and I think we are getting close to Gabe country right now.
I'll pull this. I got it right.
It is a lot of people wanting to see Gabe go as well. So, in your mission work, do you,
no, we're not in Gabe country.
We're not in Gabe country yet. Okay, so are we confident in Trinidad? Is that where we are going?
That's what I've told everyone that's asked.
Okay. Do you have a passport yet?
No.
Okay. You should start the process of getting a passport.
Yeah, but if I delay it, that means I might not have to go.
Oh, you're going to go. You're going to go. The people want to see you go.
I know.
Your mom got mad on here and
she
told
did.
all the people how frustrated they were.
How
frustrated she was for sending them.
Me too.
I am thrilled.
I didn't agree to it. You just said you're going to do this.
No. Gabe said it, and you agreed to it.
Gabe said 100.
And that's what happened.
I said 1,000.
No, 1,000 for Gabe is what we said.
Yeah, we bumped that stat down.
All right. So Trinidad it is.
I think we're doing a VBS there, if that's what I understood.
I think you should do the podcast from Trinidad. So bring the camera with you.
No.
Bring some equipment. Do it on your phone somehow, some way. Let's do
I'll
the
record a
podcast.
clip for the podcast.
Record the podcast. Record the podcast from Trinidad. It's going to be amazing.
Totally.
All right. Love you guys. Thank y'all for spending some time with us.
See ya.
Peace out. Let's go.